Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a Tuesday night chat. We have a Tuesday night live chat going on tonight. And tonight we have a very special guest. We have the one and only Vickie Musni. Good evening, Vickie.
Hi, John. How are you?
I am great. And it's great to have you here because we have got some important topics to talk about tonight. I want to make sure that, okay, the YouTube video is off. That's a big thing because if I have the audio on that, then we get this feedback thing going on. So I wanted to make sure it was off. So.
I totally trust you for that.
So Vickie, you are a certified personality trainer. Did I say that right?
You did.
That sounds great because you're going to help me with a problem I have at this time of the year.
Okay.
We just finished with the bridal show things up here in Minnesota, so that means it's time when brides are calling, and that means that I'm meeting with more brides. And there's times I've gone to meetings and I just felt like I was able to understand them and communicate well with them, and then there's times where it's like they're from a completely different world. I'm just not connecting with them. I'm not communicating properly with them, and it's just a very frustrating thing. Help.
That happens. Well, I think the first thing, and you probably know this already, is that you can't change them. You know, if you're meeting with somebody and you feel like the communication is not happening the way you want it to do, you can't change the way that they are going to communicate with you. So it's up to you to do what you can to understand them and change the way you are communicating. Mm-hmm. You might have to choose different words or a different tone of voice or different mannerisms or take a whole different approach once you figure out what they need. And for me, the easiest way I found to do that is by trying to understand their personality type.
So that's really where I'm most likely having a kind of a falling out here, is that I'm not grasping who they are and how they communicate.
Yeah. If you can train yourself to pick up on the subtle clues, the words that they're choosing, the way they carry themselves, the way they are dressed when they come to a meeting, or even if it's over the phone or online, keywords in the conversation, there are ways that you can make an educated guess onto which personality type they are. And then if you know those types and you say, oh, okay, well, this person's a yellow. I can tell this because of, they're wearing this loud, flashy outfit, or they've got they're the ones that come to you at the wedding fair with the big tiara and the sash that says I'm the bride. They're the ones that want all the attention on them. So if you can, in your mind, label them, okay, they're the yellow. They need fun. They need affirmation. They need to know that they are going to be the center of attention. That's how I'm going to steer this conversation, because I know that at the core of what's going on in their world, that's what matters to them the most.
Sure.
They are that typical today is all about me kind of bride.
Okay.
But you might have the brides at the other end, the opposite side, which I call the blues, that are the more introspective, the deep thinkers, the more quiet, the ones that don't like to be the center of attention, the ones that are perfectly content to say, no, I just want everything to be about my guests. No, I don't really want to have a first dance. I'm kind of uncomfortable with the whole grand entrance idea. How can we make that really short and sweet and then shift the attention to other people? And you need to approach those clients from a completely different standpoint, and as simple as doing things like mirroring them. If they come into the meeting and they're quiet and calm and laid back and kind of leaning back and, thinking more slowly and speaking slowly, you want to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. If your client is acting like that, and you come in and you're all bubbly and leaning in and happy and excited, you're going to freak them out. You're going to be overwhelmed by that. In the same way that if it's the other way around, it's not as common in the entertainment world, but I do know DJs that fall into that blue category, and they're quieter by nature, and They kind of have to turn on the hype sometimes when they're performing to get the party going. But if you've got that personality, that quiet, and the people you're meeting with are the opposite, that yellow, all about the flash and the bling and the excitement, they might be underwhelmed by who you are.
Sure.
And so you've got to be able to read the cues and not be fake, but figure out how to put your best foot forward in the way that's going to connect with them most effectively. So that's two of the four examples. Then the other two that are the other pair of opposites are what I call the reds and the greens. The reds are what you think of when you think of the word red, like that power color. It's that
Sure.
image. The high energy, high maintenance. I know what I want. I'm going to get stuff done, and I need control. I want to be in charge of my event. I'm going to make things happen. And I expect you, if I hire you, to do everything exactly how I've told you to do it. That's that super strong red personality.
Sure.
And the opposite of that would be the greens, which are the cool, calm, collected, just kind of laid back, go with the flow, almost chameleon like in the sense that they can kind of become whatever personality type they need to really easily for a while. But at their core of who they are, they're just really peaceful people who are really laid back and sometimes have trouble making decisions, can be easily overwhelmed, can tend to procrastinate. So if, say, you're the red business owner who's very driven, very focused, very, hey, I need this by this day. I want you to fill out this questionnaire and give me these forms. And you've got a green client, they're looking at that high energy, fast paced deadlines, and they're kind of going, whoa, this is more than I can do right now. I don't want to have to make a lot of decisions. So understanding that going into it can help you as the professional know what you want to say in that meeting and how you want to guide that conversation. So if you're meeting with that opposite personality, it can be overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know how to work the strengths into the conversation and make it so that your strengths are complementing the areas where that personality type is lacking, then you can make that into a really good match. So a green client, for example, that's overwhelmed and has trouble making decisions, if you come in as a red business owner, opposite personality type, and they just see you as controlling and overbearing, that's going to be a negative. But if they see you as someone that they can trust, that will make it happen, that will take on all the responsibility so that you're relieving their stress, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of a match is going to make that green personality feel comfortable.
So are there matches that work better together than others?
Personality types that are the same, the yellows, blues, and greens are naturally going to bond with other yellows, blues, and greens.
Okay.
So yellows are that high energy, fun loving. They're going to naturally click with other yellows. Greens will feel calm and peaceful, and just they'll be able to just sit and chill and kind of hang and have that casual vibe with other green laid back personalities. They're more likely to click together naturally. Blues, quiet, detail oriented. They're the ones that show up with the binder, and like have all their wedding in spreadsheet format. If you're that kind of business owner, they're going to naturally bond with that. So those three, if you're working with the same personality type, natural click most of the time.
Sure.
Reds, it's a 50-50 split, kind of an even toss up. Either you're going to be on the same page and you're going to bond and you're going to be driven and focused in the same direction, or you're going to butt heads and have a power struggle.
Right.
And then the other ones, like I said, it's opposites attract if you're presenting the positive side. If people can see, if a blue personality is going, you know what, I'm not that loud party person, but I trust this yellow to make my party fun and exciting and happy in the way I want it for my guests, then that can be an opposites attract situation. But if the yellow is so overwhelming that they're not sensitive to how they approach the blue, then they're going to repel them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does. And that's kind of a fine line.
It is. And it's part of it. The main thing is just being aware.
Yeah.
And because without the knowledge of the personalities, you are going to just be who you are naturally. And it takes that extra step of saying, okay, I've got to step back, put myself in this person's shoes. How are they feeling? How are they perceiving things that are happening? How is this conversation affecting them? What's their ultimate goal? Is it fun and excitement? Is it, perfection and details? Is it having control of the event? Or is it just keeping the peace and having everybody feel comfortable? And then once you understand where they fall on those things, then you know how to relate better.
Interesting.
Am I overwhelming you?
No. I'm trying to think of a way. What I want to, and I don't want to mean to put you on the spot, but I'm going to anyway. Let's try to see: is there a way in which you could demonstrate speaking? And granted, I won't be able to play the role of any of the four properly for this demonstration, but could you do a one-sided conversation, such as you were going to be giving some information to the different personalities, so that people can see how that would differ. So if you were giving this little paragraph to a red.
So if the yellow was sitting in front of me and
Yes.
I know that going into the meeting.
Yes, and let's try to make it so you're conveying the same information to all four, because we want to see the different ways.
Well, it's more about where do you start and how do you steer the conversation and how do you plan for it. So if I know ahead I'm going into a conversation or a sales meeting with a yellow, first of all, I plan more time for it, because I know that they're going to want to talk more. They're going to want to share more stories. They're going to want to tell me more details. And they're probably going to bring more people with them. They're more likely to bring their mom, their sister, their maid of honor, their other bridesmaids to that sales meeting, because they need everyone's approval and input before they can hire anybody. So I plan for those to go longer, and I know that going in.
Okay.
And then if that's the case, then you keep the focus on the fun. How do you find out? You ask questions about the dress, because they're all about all eyes are going to be on me. And how do you want to be introduced? I'd probably start with that, because if you're planning a reception, that's like that moment where the spotlight is on them for the first time for the evening. So you want to hit that, that pretty hard. And again, it's always about how do we keep the focus on them and what do they want?
Sure.
Now, if I had that client coming in that I knew was a blue, first of all, I would make sure that we're in a really quiet place. It's much harder to meet with a blue in like a coffee shop setting, because there's too much background information. They're definitely the ones you want to meet, in an office, or if you have to meet somewhere else, you want to make sure you have as few distractions as possible.
So easily distracted in. Okay.
Well, that they need a quieter environment to really think. They're that deep thinker, detail oriented, and they want to have a quieter, slower conversation. And again, I said they're often the ones that will come in with that list, or that they've downloaded the planners online, or they've, brought the checklist that they got off somebody's blog, and they've been thinking about things. So if that's the case, then I would just start with, what have you found out so far? What do you know that you want and don't want? And then go through their points slowly with them, one at a time. And that's what they need, is just time to ask their specific questions. They tend to be the perfectionists in the group. So they have their list, and you just, one point at a time, answer their questions. And then later, like in terms of following up, it's not good to put them on the spot, because they like to have that extra time to process. So they're the ones you should always email. Because if you just call them and say, hey, what did you think about this? Or what song did you want for this? They don't want to, you'll get that deer in the headlights. I need to think. I need to process.
Right.
And so if you send them an email, then it feels safer. Then they can look at that in their own time, take as much time as they want to process. They can do some research, figure out, oh, maybe I do want that song for this, and then they'll respond when they're ready. So it's really listening for those cues. Now the reds.
Now, hang on, before you go there, I noticed something when you were kind of giving some of the questions, or you were kind of simulating some of the questions. The tonality of your voice changed to more of a soothing tone when you're talking to the blues. Is that just?
That's because I am not naturally blue at all, and I have to really work to lower my volume and to speak more slowly, because it doesn't come naturally to me.
But that would be something that a blue person would find more soothing and more comfortable to talk more like the.
How they are speaking too. So you want to always try to match the tone and pacing of the people that you're meeting with.
Gotcha. Okay, so it was a deliberate. I did pick up a deliberate.
It's very deliberate for me as a trainer. I have trained myself to do that. And again, I'm very much on the top of the spectrum on my quadrant chart. I'm all red and yellow, all extrovert, all loud. And so for me, when I'm meeting with blues or greens, I have to consciously work to, to remove some of that excess energy
Mm-hmm.
that I have and try to match the pace that I would be expecting them to have in the conversation. So I do that when I train. It's easier for me when I've got someone across from me,
Sure.
and I can try to mirror what they're doing.
Right. Okay. Okay. So good. I did pick up on it. Right. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
red. You were up to red.
So reds are the ones that typically come in knowing exactly what they want. And I tell the story in my book of a red client that called me and he wanted to hire us to do video for his daughter's bat mitzvah. And it was the shortest conversation ever. It was just, are you available on this date? You have someone? Okay, who would it be? I said, Phil is my camera guy that I'm going to send out that day. Can Phil meet me tomorrow at 4 o'clock at the temple so I can go over with both of you exactly what he's allowed to do and where he's allowed to stand and where I want the camera? Sure thing. So Phil and I met him the next day. There was no sales consultation. It didn't even happen. We showed up and he walked us around the temple and said, this is what we did for my older daughter. This is what I want you guys to do. How much do I write the check for?
Right.
That was a red. I could have probably talked myself out of that sale.
Mm-hmm.
I could have insisted, oh, well, I always schedule a meeting at my office or at, I always do this. And he didn't need all of that. He knew what he wanted. I knew I could deliver it. I just needed to, in as few words as possible, show him that I could give him exactly the services that he wanted and we would both be happy. So sometimes you just have to be in tune. If they really know, you can talk yourself out of a sale by giving them more information. Especially because reds are they're so driven and so busy. They tend to be the most overscheduled. And so they don't want anyone to waste their time. And depending on what the level of service, again, this was a single camera video shoot for a bat mitzvah. It probably would have been different if we were doing the entertainment. So, you have to know what services you're selling and if you're comfortable booking like that. But sometimes you may have to say, well, I require one planning meeting or one in-person meeting before I can schedule, XYZ. If that's your case, then you need to do that as concisely as possible. But
Sure.
If you can sell over the phone like this or in a quick meeting, and that works for your services, and then especially for that red personality, they're going to be like, great, you made this easy. I trust you to do exactly what I need, and I'll write you the check and we're done. I'll see you on,
Yeah, exactly. Just show up and don't forget about it.
Yep. And then greens. Greens, like I said, often they're the most overwhelmed. They want everyone to be comfortable and just to keep the peace and to get along and have fun. They tend to not be super high energy though, and sometimes are the worst procrastinators. So they'll think they can do a lot of stuff, and then as it gets closer to the event date, they're the most likely to freak out. So they're going to need help along the way. So even from that initial sales consultation, the more you can show them that you have the expertise to provide what they need, you can take that stress away because you have the experience to deliver on what they need. And yeah, they may have their vision and their ideas, but they don't know how to make it happen. So if you can just showcase, yeah, I've got that. I'll take care of all of this so you don't have to worry about it. You'll be free to just sit back and enjoy your day, spend time with your guests. That's going to resonate really well with that green client. Just they'll be able to find comfort in knowing that you'll take care of the details and they won't have to.
So now as we're talking about this, I'm thinking to myself, there are some of the personality types I think I work better with than others. I could see really almost using this concept to target my advertising with the colors I pick, with the images I put into the advertising, to kind of look for that certain and does that work?
Yes, it does. And in some of the seminars, I get into this a little bit where I do an activity where I have people pull out their business cards and trade them with someone else in the audience and see if they can identify color personality types in the business card. And then in my SMART seminar and workshop, we get into that into more detail when we actually look at different websites and how they speak different languages. So if people want to attract the broadest vast variety of clients, then I recommend you have something for everyone in your website. And so, for example, um, your yellows come in and they want to know about what do you do that's fun? How can you make my party exciting? What can you do to keep it about me? And they want like the social aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to know maybe where you work. Like they'll be the ones that are going to want to look at pictures and be like, oh yeah, hey, that's my venue. They worked there before.
Right.
Everything's like that. Or oh look, that photographer, is one that I've been considering, and I see their watermark on the fun party photos and things like that. So that speaks to a yellow. They're going to want to see a lot of the photos and the activity and that kind of stuff. Blues, make sure you have all of your references readily available. Yellows are just going to want to probably read a couple and be like, okay, look, people had fun at that party. But a blue will sit there and read, all 27 references that you posted.
They're the ones who go to Amazon and read each and every.
Mm-hmm. My dad is a blue. Yeah. Buying appliances with him as when I was in my first apartment. Well, with my yellow personality, but wait, what do you mean I have to actually read what the warranty says?
I'm starting to get some insight into my wife a little bit more now, because
yes. Personalities for Families is the next book that I'm slated to start working on this year. So, but yeah, every time I do a workshop, people notice that. And a couple of the workshops recently, I had a couple husband and wife teams attend.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though I try to keep the workshops very business focused, you can't help but notice that this applies to lots of other areas of life. And then there's a lot of us in this industry, like, myself included, that work with our spouse.
Yes.
And so understanding that dynamic is huge if you're going to run a business with someone that you are also married to and live with.
For sure.
I lost my thought.
Okay, so we were up to red, and I interrupted you. We were up to red, and we were talking about some marketing tips for reaching that on your website as you were going.
So for reds, they're just going to want to know the basics really quickly and efficiently. Remember, they're driven by efficiency. They know what they want. Make it super easy for them to find stuff. And if they, I don't want to get into the pricing conversation and whether or not you should post it on your website right now, because that's a whole topic for another day.
Yep.
But you want to, if you don't have it on there, at least have your contact information really accessible. Keep things short, and they're not going to want to read, whole long paragraphs about what you do. Bullet points is all you really need. And that's good for most personality types because people in general nowadays don't have very long attention spans. So you're better off using bullet points anyhow, but especially reds because reds think in bullet points, and then using language for the greens, just like that part we talked about, let us make your event happen for you. We'll take the stress away. We'll do the work so you can enjoy the party, those kind of things, just incorporating both words and visuals that relate to the different personality types. So something for everybody. And it's okay if your website kind of leans more one way than the other. And especially as an entertainer, your site should represent who you are. And so that's okay that if your company kind of tends to feel more yellow or more red or whatever. But if you want to attract clients from across the board, or if you're a multi-op, this is another really good thing. If you've got different MCs on your staff with different personalities, then if you go into a sales consultation thinking about personality types, that just gives you an edge for knowing how you can best match them with people they're going to feel comfortable with.
Sure. Interesting. Questions. We've got about around 5 minutes left, gang. If you've got some questions, and I know this young man in the chat room has been doing a lot of answering of questions for us, who happens to be a mainly red, but a little bit of yellow from what he was saying. But if you guys have got any questions that Mitch has uncovered for you in the chat room, just you can pop those up here in the chat here in the last couple of minutes. Before we get to the questions, Vickie, some words. You mentioned that there's terms that some of these personalities will use. Give us a couple of terms with each one that would be kind of keys to their personality, if you could.
Fun, excitement, talking about my friends. Those and then wanting to be the center of attention or in the spotlight. Those are your cues for your yellows.
Okay.
And then the blues are the opposite. They're the ones that are going to say things like, I don't like being the center of attention. I want to have private, intimate moments, which is complete opposite on the spectrum. But that's a good thing to know, especially if you're in charge of the entertainment. You don't want to be planning all of these interactive things and have, a couple that leans towards the blue.
Yeah.
And doesn't want to be the spotlight. You need to know that going in. Reds, the control, efficiency, timing. I want this my way. Those kind of things. They're not going to be as open to suggestion. So early on, you need to probably just make sure you can deliver what they're asking for. And then once you do that, you'll build that trust that you need. And then after they become your client, when you begin the planning process, once you've shown them that you can do everything that they're asking for, they'll trust you.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can make suggestions, and then they will be able to hear you. But with a red, if you suggest too much too soon, they're going to interpret it as, you're not listening to me. You're not going to do things my way. I don't want you running my show your way.
Sure.
So just listening for those controlling kind of words and lingo, and making sure that you can deliver. And if you've got a red that is so red and you're like, you know what, this isn't a good fit for me, then hopefully you can figure that out early on, because they're not going to change.
Yes.
That's who they are and how they are.
And it could make it miserable.
Comfortable. I'm worried about my guests. I'm thinking about my family. I just want everyone to be relaxed. I don't want to be stressed. Those are those comfort kind of words that are your buzzwords for your green personality.
Now, would you be able to pick up in a green personality the idea of them being kind of in a world of chaos, poorly planned? How that then unorganized? Is that come out quickly?
Greens and your yellows are the ones that are going to have more trouble, because on the chart they're the more people oriented instead of task oriented.
Okay.
They tend to have more trouble with details. Yeah, both greens and yellows.
So it's one of those things that you're going to have variation, as Mitch said. He's a little red, mainly red, a little yellow. That there's going to be these variations back and forth. A lot red. said the person who does a podcast with him every week.
Oh, we just read a book together, so yeah, you could see both. And this was a case of two red personalities focused on the same task and really got a lot done in a short amount of time. And so that's the good side of having two reds together. There's, every now and then we have our disagreements and, we figure them out. But for the most part, because we've got the same goal in mind, it's easy for us to get stuff done.
Yeah.
And you'll see that dynamic, because in our industry too, I've been kind of simplifying it, because we only had a half an hour. You're not just dealing with one personality type. You're talking about two people getting married, and often parents that are involved. So you could be sitting down in a sales meeting with 2, 3, 4 different personalities in front of you. And that's why I have a workshop, because it takes practice.
And let's talk about that now. You're going to be doing a workshop at Mobile Beat Las Vegas. I'm putting the link into the description below for everyone who's out there watching. But go ahead and tell us more about it, please.
I have a 3-hour workshop that I do called The Power of Personalities, where we actually spend a lot more time going over what John and I just talked about in a short 30 minutes. And we practice, how do we apply this to different situations? One of the fun things that we do is kind of silly, but I think it really helps bring it home, that we do a personality profile for each of the Avengers characters, all the superheroes, and talk about, how you can see these traits in other people. And I just think that helps make it real, because it's not super cut and dried with everybody. And that's not what this is about. It's not about trying to fit people in a box and say, oh, every yellow feels like this. No, which way do you lean? And people have a primary and a secondary. So we spend a lot of time practicing identifying the personality types. And then, okay, so how do we apply this? Now that we know this, how do we go a little deeper and find out, if I know my personality type, what are my natural strengths and weaknesses? What do I bring to the table? How is that going to affect the way I communicate with the other personality types? And then what does this look like in my business setting? So we actually will workshop out some scenarios about what are the key buzzwords for each personality type? How would each type respond to a particular situation? And then we close with just some different scenarios and how would each type, what have you learned about how this applies to sales, how this applies to networking, how it applies to, sitting across the table from a client versus being on the phone with a client. How can we actually use this? So very application focused.
Nice. Yeah. And what date were you going to be doing that again?
That workshop in Vegas is Monday, the 14th of March from 8:30 to 11:30. So right before all of the main seminar stuff kicks off in the afternoon.
Very nice. If people want to find more information.
It happens to be in the Phoenix area. I'm actually doing this next Thursday in Phoenix. That one is Thursday, the 11th of February. So if that works out, that one's there too.
Is information on either of those, are they all on the website?
Yes, on my website, on the Facebook page. Yep.
Website?
VickieMusni.com. Just spell it the same way I do, VickieMusni.com.
That sounds good. I'm going to make sure that that's saved. There it is. So you guys can go down into the description below. You can click a refresh on this. We're going to be switching here in just a second. Dan Carpenter is going to be bouncing in. But during that little break time, if you want to do a refresh, then it will show up. You can open it in a new window and check it out. You also have some books and resources and such, and they can find all of that on the website?
Yes. Actually, I'll be honest. Creatingconnections.biz is more current than my website. I don't have my brand new book on my website yet, so I'm going to include that link as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to give Mitch credit for that. He maintains that website, and he's got the book link because the books actually just came out on Sunday on Amazon. Our newest book, Creating Connections.
Creating Connections. What was it?
.biz.
Biz. Okay. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. We'll have those all
got
there.
All of our books on there as well.
I've got both of those links there, so everyone can check it out. And yeah, I think we've got it there. Vickie, thank you very much for being on tonight. There's some great information. And now I'm waiting for the book about how to understand my office mate / spouse.
Okay. That's in Personalities for Business. There's a whole section in there about understanding, office politics. So yeah, the spouse part will come even more, but you'll get the basics in the first book.
Well, I ordered, I believe that was what I ordered yesterday or the day before when you posted it. So looking forward to reading that and checking it out.
Great. Thanks so much, John.
Yep, thank you much. And we're going to jump here, and Dan will be back. And Vickie, we will see you in Las Vegas.
See you soon.
All right, thanks. So we're now into section 2 of tonight's show. We're going to be having Dan Carpenter jump in just a few minutes with us. And then at about 9 o'clock Central, which would be 10 o'clock Eastern, and work it from there, we'll have Brian Redd joining us, and we're going to be talking music. Well, we're going to be talking music in our second session here also, as soon as Dan jumps in, because we wanted to kind of look at some of the music that we started with. And during this section, if a couple of you could help us out, we're going to test something tonight. We're going to be testing a Twitter feed. Hey, there we go. I think that's Dan popping in right now. There he is. Good evening, Dan.
Hey.
I just was doing well. I just was telling everyone we're going to try a Twitter feed. For those who have your Twitter account handy and you've got it set up, what we'd like you to do is if you could go out and tweet at Disc Jockey News, or if you have a question or anything to that effect, or you have a statement you want to say out to the rest of the world, what we're going to be trying and seeing if it works a little bit is to take a couple of those messages, and they're supposed to implement into what we're doing here tonight. So if you are out there and you've got your Twitter feed open, even if you want to do a shout out to yourself and be cool, that's cool. We just want to see if this system works. So Dan, we're going to be talking music. We're going to be talking about the compilations that we grew up with. And I lost you.
Oh, come on.
There you are. There you're back. There you're back.
I'm here. I'm shutting everything off that I possibly can shut off. So hopefully that fixed what happened there.
Yeah, that was we lost audio and everything. Usually we hold audio.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe new modem needs to. We'll see, but hope we're good now. Sorry. Okay. So what were you saying?
As far as we're going to talk about the music that they grew up with and how we were starting to, we found our music when we were younger. You had talked earlier in some of our shows, about the downloading and such, finding it there. But I wanted to look back at some of the early compilations that when we first were started, those are some of the things that we were using. And I actually went out and I dug up some of the different compilation books here that we had used over the years. And I just wanted to kind of, share some thoughts with that. And those of you out there, there's some of the things you guys have had that some discs that you got early on that were like gold discs that were just golden for you. And let's kind of share some of those and have a little fun with that tonight. So are you still with me? Good. Are we having issues, guys? When you're out there watching us, is it just Dan's side or is it both of ours that's being flaky? I've got a couple of people saying it's flaky. Cause yeah, you're still. I think you're froze, Dan.
I'm froze. Okay. Once go into my office.
Yeah, restart it. Restart your stuff, and then come back on, and let's get that.
All right.
I'm gonna check and see. Yeah, our stream. Everything seems to be good. Everything seems to be good. But one of the things we're going to talk about was the compilations. Now, and I've done this in a different video, and I'm going to try to get this on here so you guys can see this. Is there was a time when DJ compilations. This particular one is the Platinum series that was put out many years ago. But there were times where we had music on discs. Yeah, these round things were CDs for those of you. And this was one of the things when this came out. This was the Platinum series was one. The Mobile Beat had their top 200. There were just a variety of different. Okay, thanks guys. Thanks. Trying to do two things. But the Platinum series was a kind of a cool thing, and we can look at that a little bit more. But what I wanted to share was an older set before those came out, because we had to go and buy music on, at the time, CD is what we were really doing. And there were some mixtape things you could go on. But we were going to the stores such as Music Land was a big one in our area. There was a Sam Goody. No, what were they? I don't remember. Sam something or another. They were there for about a year. But we would go and have to buy these compilation discs. My very first one that I bought, if you guys can remember your very first compilation album, this was an album, was a Rock and Drag. It was a K-Tel record. This would have been back in the late 80s, maybe mid 80s, but it was all beach music, Jan and Dean, Beach Boys, the Safaris, different things like that. But it was basically the kind of beach music for the drag racing thing, the kind of stuff you play at a car show today. That was my very, very first one. Then, of course, we got into getting into the DJ world, and then we had things like, a lot of you probably will remember some of the different Billboard discs. I want to go to a couple of these. The Billboard, where you had the top rock hits from a certain year. Those were super popular. And what was kind of cool about some of those is that we would have some of those were like I think it was 1961. The very first time I bought it had The Lion Sleeps Tonight as track 10. The second, Sam Goody, thank you there. The second time I bought it for my wife's system, as we kind of multiplied, The Lion Sleeps Tonight wasn't the last song, and I believe it was 1961. And it was so frustrating for me because I had to go and look to find one that had that. And I ended up buying it used off a guy, and I think they were selling in the store for like $7, and I ended up paying him like $25 to buy that one. But one of the discs that we used an awful lot was the Billboard, like the 1955. If you can't see, we're not going to really be able to show too terribly much on that. But it has a lot of the music, the oldies music. When we first were starting out, we would have maybe the 55, 56, 57, 58. Those 4 discs were basically all the oldies music that you could find without going and buying individual albums, the individual artist albums. The Billboard stuff basically was what really made our jobs a lot easier. Another disc that was early in the process was an oldies, the oldies but goodies disc that came out, and this was one that had a lot of the songs that we would play at shows, and again, they were all on one disc, which was so incredibly cool. It was just a different time. another set, a series. This one actually came out. I'm gonna pull the actual sleeve on this one. Was an only rockin' disc, and this is going to kind of lead into tonight's show with Brian. The only rock and roll discs. They had them in 5-year increments. Those were probably some of the greatest discs. I actually contacted the manufacturer of those discs, and I ended up buying, because then this is about the time we expanded and went to a multi. We ended up buying the whole series, so it was the only rock, and it was every 5 years there was another, and then they had the only slow songs, and they had different things. I ended up buying, I think, about 300 discs from them, because I bought everything they had, and I bought it in, I think, 20 sets of those to make sure that we had all of that back music. They had Only Radio Hits was another one that was part of that process, and it was just really, really a great way for us who went from the time of records when you would have one hit here, one hit there. Really wasn't much for compilations in the album. Then we went to tapes, and there were some, and boy, we get to CD, and then there were just tons of them, and they would go every couple of years, and they went all the way up. Here was an Only Dance one, which was they went up into the mid '90s, so we could get things on here that we couldn't find anywhere else, which was really kind of cool, and it was a neat way to buy music. Then a few years later is when you had things like the Platinum Series. Now, if you're not familiar with the Platinum Series, I'm going to try to pop this open a little bit. What was really kind of neat is that they had their little sheets that came with them, and this is an original right here. It's still the plasticky things. If you haven't seen any of the Platinum Series or any of the Mobile Beat series or the Prime Cut promo only, the Platinum, I believe, was Platinum from the same company did the Prime Cuts. I don't remember right off the top of my head, but ERG had one up in Canada. It was called Knockout Hits. The Essentials, there we go. The Essentials was from promo only, so this must have been from the Prime Cuts people. But it was kind of neat, and I'm gonna see if I can show you guys this a little bit. Is that the discs were kind of lined up and organized by songs, so that disc one, if I wanted to play an oldies, my very top, where am I at? I'm sorry, I'm trying to get here. Yeah, yep, I'm right up here. There we go. The very top song here was from Benny Goodman. There it focused. And then if you go down to the second disc, the very top song was also a similar song. So what you could do is, with the Platinum Series specifically, is you could go and you could play song 1 off disc 1, then you could bounce over and play song 1 off disc 2, and you would have kind of a mix where you could be working back and forth between the two players, which was an unusual thing, because before that, we didn't have that kind of suggestion that helps. And of course, the Platinum Series and all these were really talking about the different genres, and that was really, for some of us, almost the first experience with genres. Before that, we knew country and knew that, but it's like, oh yeah, maybe we should be grouping the 70s music together more, or we should be grouping the 80s more, what have you. So it was a really kind of an eye-opening time. But yeah, the ERG, if you ever get a chance to pick up any of these sets, you can only buy them on eBay pretty much, but if you can pick those up, they're probably highly illegal, but there is a lot of great stuff. I think the Platinum Series was like the top 800, ERG was like the top almost 2,000 knockout hits for the whole thing. Just a lot about Flashback. Yep, there's DJ Tools was another one. Gosh, there was a lot. Oh, the Time Life. Oh, goodness gracious, I forgot about the Time Life stuff. Oh, I remember, with the Time Life, when those would come on, and wanting to go and spend money and buy those. Oh, if I'd have had a credit card back then, it would have been crazy. So Dan, I just was going through some of the different things and such. Now, when you were putting your music library together, what are some of the tools how are you putting that together?
Well, I started initially because I was able to kind of jump in a little bit, in my viewpoint, probably late to the game. What I started by doing was picking up just a lot of the greatest hits. I felt like that was probably what I needed to start with. Plus, I was on very limited income. I was fresh out of college, so I had debts and everything else going on. And so I was trying to do this as cheap as possible in a lot of ways. And so we started off, like I said, with the greatest hits. But then what I also picked up was like the Ultimate Dance Party, like 98 and 99. And this was basically a disc that if I put in and hit play, it would play for, I think, 45 minutes without me having to do anything. It was all mixed for me and everything else.
Yep.
The versions weren't exactly good to play individually, but it was one of those things that was kind of a learning experience. And then, of course, I'll admit it, after I got kind of those. I got into the Napster realm, and so yeah, so I did the illegal downloading. I did um, what I'm sure a lot of people who didn't know better did at the time, and that was you picked up what you picked up wherever you could pick up, and I think at the time I even went to my local library and I'd borrow CDs and I'd rip them, and let's just put all the dirty laundry out there. I worked for a radio station, and they would get compilations of all the newest CDs or newest releases that an album or a label would want them to promote. So my boss, after loading the CD, would turn his eyes for a day, and I'd borrow it. So yeah, so I mean, like I said, I'm not proud of it, and I think so far I'm pretty sure I've gone through and deleted everything that I had and gone about it legally since then. But yeah, so that's what I did.
So you mentioned, of course, getting greatest hits discs, and that when we first started, that really didn't exist as much as we'd like to think it did, and then it was come on more as time went on. What was one of your first greatest hits discs that or albums when you got it? You were like, this is the great. It was really like kind of a pinnacle moment for you. And you got this one because you've been after that song for a long time, or you were after that set of songs for a long time. Which one stands out to you?
That's kind of tough. I know what my first greatest hits was, and I can go with that one for sure, and that was Kiss. It was one of the first weddings I did. The groom and bride were very much Kiss fanatics, and so I went out and bought the greatest hits Kiss album, and they loved it. They were ecstatic about it. Probably I would say what has served me the best over the years, and that's where I'm probably gonna have to go with that, because I can't say this was a song that was hard to find otherwise, but would be the Michael Jackson collection. I want to say it was History. So it was a little bit after the game. I picked up, I bought singles here and there and different things like that. But when I picked that up, and then it was just like, oh, there's a hit. Oh, there's a hit. And then there's like songs I didn't even know were hits. People were like, oh, can you play that one for us? Let me check. Oh yeah, sure. Let's go for that one. So yeah, I would say probably that was what is, like I said, served me the best.
Just trying to look at a couple of them that I had gotten early in the process, and I guess as looking at it, many of these were in the early 2000s. Getting Billy Joel's when the double set with his greatest hits 1 and 2 on CD, because I had that on tape forever. But when I got that on CD and was able to play any of those songs at a moment's notice, that was a huge one. When did Def Leppard's greatest hits come out? Oh, that must have been in the early 2000s also.
Yeah, because I remember when I had the club I played at, they had provided all the CDs, and I know that was in there, and yeah, that was one I downloaded too. So
that was 1990 through 95. But when was it? But that particular album, what was kind of cool about that is when that came out, it was released. Yeah, it was released in 95. When that came out, we actually were doing a series of bars at the time, small town bars. And we had Def Leppard night in these bars where we would go and like every fourth song was a Def Leppard song. And then that went over so well that I think it was a few months later we did Van Halen nights, and the greatest hits album wasn't out at the time, but we just had everything Van Halen did. So we did a Van Halen night where every fourth, fifth song was Van Halen. Then the last one was AC/DC night where we did the AC/DC. So it was interesting, very, very interesting.
I know another one that I was very happy to pick up, and that was the Beatles One. Just because when you're looking at the collection of Beatles songs, I mean, you've got the White Album, and you've got I'm going to blank on all the names, but there was the multitude of different discs that you'd have to pick up, and especially for the longest time, you weren't getting them on Amazon, you weren't getting them on iTunes, you weren't getting them anywhere other than to buy the full album. And with their collection, that's a lot of CDs. So when number one came out, or just album one or whatever, and it was like 18 songs, and it was a bunch of their number ones. It was just like, okay, relief. Now I don't have to go out and spend $200 on CDs to pick up these songs. I can pick them up pretty easily. So
the irony of that statement is that I also purchased that. Again, we were multi at the time, so we bought multiple copies. And now here I find myself today I think I purchased 3 Beatles albums, the actual old albums on vinyl, because that's the kind of stuff I grew up listening to when Dad would throw an album on the record player. So it's kind of that weird circle thing going on.
It just sounds better on vinyl, right?
We get to the nostalgia part is really what caused me to get back into this, as you guys have talked about turntables and vinyl. I don't know yet because I haven't got a turntable. As Vickie was talking about earlier about people who are indecisive, there's parts of my life that I'm very, very decisive, and it's like, boom, we're done, don't waste my time. Then there are parts of my life that I will sit there and I will debate and think about and hem and haw. We might be doing this show in February of 2017, and I'll have a collection, a crate of vinyl, because I'm buying one or two a month, but I probably won't have a turntable yet. So that'll be something, gang, I'm going to need some help with, giving me some suggestions on finding a good turntable, not for DJ work, but for more of the audiophile side without breaking the bank, because I'm seeing some of them that are $1,500 to $2,000.
Well, you were just at NAMM. I mean, come on, they were
there, and
at least a couple there, right?
They were, and I looked at, there was an Akai one that looked kind of interesting. There was a TAC. I don't know how they pronounced that, but that was part of the Gibson family. That was one I actually looked at on Amazon a little bit. That came with an Audio-Technica 90 stylus, I believe. It's something like it's an Audio-Technica stylus. And then, of course, there's the DJ ones, something from Pioneer and Denon with their new ones. I mean, there's some really those, but I'm almost looking for more of an audiophile one. So,
yeah, if you're not doing a bunch of pitch control and speed up and slow down and trying to scratch or anything else, a lot of those features that you're going to get with the DJ ones just are a waste.
Yeah, I think that's really what I'm thinking is as I'm looking at it, it's like there's a lot of functionality that a DJ who's performing with it or even using it with a digital system needs that I won't have, because I'm not going to drag that much stuff around, truthfully, is the best way for me to describe it. I've got, my nice little controller, and off we go. Oh, crazy.
It's just much nicer that way.
It is. It really is. It really is. Okay. So I've got a couple of, I want to check and see. We had a couple of yeah. Jim's talking about hair bands in the thing. Some of those hairband discs were pretty good back in the late 80s and early 90s. He's just got a bad attitude, that guy does.
Well, I mean, in the same respect, I know some of the other compilations that I picked up, kind of after the fact. It's one of those you're always trying to fill your library. Now that I have I have Pool and I use that for getting all my current stuff. But every once in a while, I want to go back and I want to kind of fill with what I've got. So a lot of times I'll look for the Amazon when they'll sell their MP3 albums, and so you get a compilation effect, but for a fraction of the cost of actually sitting there and buying the singles that you want.
Yeah.
And I can remember I can't remember the compilation now because it was digital, and so I never actually looked at the disc. But it was like an 80s the hairband love songs. You know what I mean, like the Poisons and Warrant and things of that nature. That was just one of those things that's like, okay, this is good to have. So if I have a couple that decides that they're gonna throw me for a loop, I got them covered.
I was gonna say, I think this was actually Lori's set of discs that we were looking at. Oh, I didn't even go back to the. Oh my goodness gracious. I didn't go back far enough, gang. She has in here the original Mobile Beat, which was done by TM Century. She has got the original, if you guys can see this.
Ooh.
This was one of the original top 200. And I say original is I think they had multiple pressings. And this is probably one of the first pressings of it, because as soon as it was listed, we bought one to see what it was going to be like. But yeah, the hairband ballads one, I think Lori's got it in here because, that was a time frame when she kind of grew up and such. So she would resort to using a lot of the hairband ballads at her shows when she was performing and such.
I'm very glad my wife never got into the hairbands.
How so?
I was just gonna let that there and see if anybody's gonna.
How so?
It,
I was just gonna say. Well, cool. That'll kind of take us there. A little talk about some of the compilations and such. There's some discs out there that you guys have, or when you bought those albums that really stand out to you? You guys, we'll chat about that just a little bit here as we're getting ready to switch over. Brian's going to be joining us in just a couple of minutes, because there's just so much stuff out there that, and even regionally, because one of the big ones that affected our shows was I just lost his name. A white sport coat and a pink carnation. That guy.
Elton John?
No. That was one of his songs. He was kind of a country guy, and but because of the types of shows in rural Minnesota, that Marty Robbins was a very, very big performer. So when his greatest hits came out, oh my goodness gracious, we were the hottest DJs around, because people over the age of 60 loved his music. It was really popular. You'd swear the guy lived around this area, but he didn't. But just kind of a regional thing, where some of the other places, if there's more of a Motown feel in the community, they would have obviously had a different musical taste. So cool. So next Monday, Dan, you're going to be joining us again?
Yes. So we're gonna move this to Monday. If I got all my notes straight from today. So Monday, 9:00.
We will be going. Let's see. We start Central Time. We're going to be starting at 7:30, so it'll be 8:00, 9:00 your time. Yes.
Okay.
And for next Monday, we're going to come out and talk about what's on Dan's mind.
We've got some good things coming up. I've just this day I was working a lot on I maybe I've talked to you about this before, but I've got this big fundraiser coming up, and that's kind of been on my brain just a little bit. And so we can talk maybe even a little bit about what just doing something for a nonprofit can benefit you.
Yeah, that sounds great. We'll be coming back then, Dan. We'll see you on Monday night at 9:00 Eastern. Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Up there.
How's the camera look?
Camera looks good. You look good. We are live, my friend.
Hello.
Hey, we are live. We are here to talk music tonight.
And speaking of music, I noticed you guys were talking about records. The number one album in the country right now is David Bowie's Black Star. And it's sold out on vinyl everywhere. You can't even buy it. But I got my cool Black Star t-shirt on tonight for the broadcasting.
So it's interesting. Of course, let's just talk about Bowie for just a few seconds here.
Yeah,
I was looking at the top songs, the top 500 songs of all time, according to, I think it was Rolling Stone.
Sure.
And it's interesting because it had a Bowie song at number around in the 40s.
Right.
I'll tell you, I hadn't even heard that one. Was it Hero?
Heroes?
Yeah.
See, David Bowie was interesting. David Bowie was like alternative before alternative.
Mm-hmm.
He was hot in Europe, but in the U.S., an underground artist, you got to hit once in a while. You got some chart stuff once in a while, but once people bought the album, it went nuts. And the other thing you have to remember about David Bowie is he really became prominent in the era of what we called album rock. And that was back in the 70s when a radio station would be bought by some dude named Bob. And Bob would have to have this radio station broadcast something, because of a license for X amount of time. So he would just have his friends come in and DJ and bring their record collections. And they would play B-sides. They weren't just playing hits. They played anything they wanted to play. That was album rock. And that's when you got cuts. You heard cuts that weren't necessarily charting, but you heard them. And that's pretty much the whole classic rock phenomenon. That's album rock stuff. And Bowie really benefited from album rock. So when I was a kid, it was all about Bowie. We had, we had Young Americans on E-Track. We had Changes One. I cut my teeth on that stuff. And by the time things like Let's Dance came out, it was like, wow, that's kind of weird for Bowie to do. I was already very familiar with him as an artist. So
Right. Yeah.
I've always been a Bowie fan. That was a hard hitter, but it's been really cool just to see everybody come out and talk about him. There have been those who have said, "Oh yeah, everybody's a Bowie fan now." It's like, yeah, kiss my ass. Bowie's been awesome forever. So
exactly. Yeah. Some people, and from our experience, because of where we are in our locale, we didn't have that experience with the albums being played, what have you. So our first real taste of Bowie when he became popular and mainstream with the different songs that we have seen on the charts.
Right.
Just kind of a different world and a different way.
Well, yeah, and we got album rock everywhere I lived. I lived in Oklahoma. It was my dog. enter the dog. Indiana, California, and here in Wisconsin. So everywhere I went, we had some kind of album rock. And usually Minneapolis, St. Paul probably got it. But you guys are way out of that range.
We are a little ways away from AM.
Yeah, you probably get something from Canada before you got them, I'm sure.
Just about. Yeah. What was the strongest stations when I was growing up as a child were the country stations, which are still unfortunately popular in this area, and the old time stations that you could hear the latest polka band from around the area. That was
right. Well, we had those too.
Yeah, and that was it. We never had that other station that we could get with our little transistor radios. I mean, it was like, come on. Yeah.
The internet, you've got this whole new world almost.
It is.
Probably.
Yeah, so nowadays my children have no idea what it's like to, first off, have to listen to dad's music because, they have their own world that they can get into.
Right.
So let's dig into tonight's topic. We're going to be talking over the next 4 Tuesdays. We're going to be talking about music that is something that DJs really need to have in their arsenal and play at the proper times.
Sure.
With the guests of that era that would like that type of stuff, because there's a lot of DJs out there who don't have the experience. You and I we're both the similar age, but we have completely different experiences when it comes to music. But there's guys who are 18 years old going out there and they have no idea why Elvis Presley's important or what music to play from Elvis Presley. So
what's odd is that if I go back and I look at, for instance, my CD collection, I have music for people who are dead. I mean, they're gone.
Yeah.
These people don't exist anymore. I have all this music from World War II, the ink spots and that kind of stuff that I used to have to pull out 25 years ago. That generation's gone. They're not here anymore. So I'm not pulling that out anymore.
Exactly, and that's why when I was going through the list today, because today we're gonna talk about music from the 50s today. As I was going through that list, I think the only person that I saw that is still alive on the list is Little Richard.
I have more than one person who's still alive on my list.
Other than that, I don't believe in it.
I haven't shared my list with John yet, by the way, audience. I would do that intentionally. I wanted it to be a little different.
Yep. So we're gonna kind of go through, and then once we've gone through,
I have like 3 people who are still alive on my list, I think.
Really, and maybe I'm missing a couple.
It's okay. I went a different route, but that's what's fun about this.
Yeah. So I went through and I basically picked a lot of the popular. And I went through and picked a lot more than 10. So that way, in case Brian and I were duplicating, we could still give you guys about 20 solid tracks that could be used at your event.
I did some considerable mentions as well.
Nice. So let's start out. Pick one. Let's chat about it, and we'll start compiling our list.
Before I even get into that, I just wanted to mention that I think as a genre for DJs, when we talk about 50s music, typically most people are actually talking about 50s and 60s.
60s, yep.
And you're looking at probably, I don't know, music between 1954 and 1965. It all kind of had the same vibe. I mean, that's a decade right there.
Yes.
Rock and roll didn't get coined until 54. So otherwise, you're only looking at 5 years of music, 54 through 59. But there is music that, again, as a genre, people consider, into the 60s to be like 50s and 60s music. It's like there used to be a time here as a DJ way back when it was like a word, 50, 60. They didn't even say the and part when they'd ask for it. You got some 50, 60? And I was like, oh, yeah, we'll play some for you.
Yep.
But for the topic of conversation tonight, staying on point, I kept it well within the 50s.
Yeah, and that was actually the difficult part as we're going through.
Yeah.
Is okay, I would play this song and I would follow it up with this song, and then you realize that second song,
a 50s song,
it came out in 62 or 63, and it's like, oh,
right. Or there's even stuff, and I don't want to blow anything on anybody's list, but there's even stuff in the 70s that qualifies, like anything from the movie Grease.
Precisely.
It all qualifies. So you can play that in a 50s set, but that's 70s music. And, Sha-Na-Na and all that stuff. And there's even stuff from the Animal House soundtrack that you can play. Again, not 50s, 1979. So it gets real tricky when we're looking at this. But just for tonight's sake of argument, again, I stayed within the 50s. And the oldest track I have is actually 1953.
Oh, you went back. Well, let's start with let's start with your oldest track that you have then.
Okay, well, I kind of did this like as a 1 through 10 kind of thing.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I got my notes here. I do have some considerable mentions we can talk about later.
Yeah.
I actually have 3 songs at number 10 because they're all so similar and they're by the same guy, and I didn't want him to completely occupy my charts.
Yeah.
The 1950s were fantastic for group active songs. So my Number 10 choice is a composer, a trumpet player, actually, Ray Anthony. And there are 3 songs I want to talk about that Ray Anthony does. One is the Chicken Dance. We all know the Chicken Dance. That's Ray Anthony's orchestra who did that.
Yep.
Another one is the Bunny Hop. And once in a while, you play that song. People will do the Bunny Hop.
Yes.
You get the right crowd. But the one I really wanted to talk about, and the one that everyone should absolutely have, is the Hokey Pokey. You got to have the Hokey Pokey if you're a DJ. And this isn't going to just be for people who are in their 70s. All right. My mother is 75. She was 18 in 1959. I don't think she'd get into the Hokey Pokey. But I do believe that I've got, I know little kids who are 5 and 6 years old who would definitely dig it. And you can do it in school dances and all that stuff. That's music from the 50s. That's Ray Anthony. All of those songs are from 1953. So that's Chicken Dance, Hokey Pokey, and Bunny Hop at number 10.
Very cool. Very cool. That was
whoosh.
That was a great, especially for DJs. What a great trifecta there.
Right. And all the same year, all the same artist, and they all still get played from mobile DJs.
Yeah.
And again, I was playing this game within decades, so that's 53.
Yeah. No, you went back and dug a little farther. I started going back into 54, and I glanced at 53,
Sure.
And it's like, oh man, there's not much
There's
there.
nothing here. Right. But then you think about it, it's like, when did that come out? And a lot of times when I was making songs for this list, just incidentally, before you tell us your next track, I thought, sure, I had a song for the 50s. It's like, oh, this is going to be number 2. No, it's 63, 64. You talked about that earlier. It happened a lot. We didn't know.
It really did. It
totally just fit right in there. So,
So the first one I want to talk about was in 1959. I'm going on the other end of the 50s.
Okay.
This is a kind of a slower song. It's Paul Anka's "Put Your Head on My Shoulder." It's kind of a slower song. It's one that I've used at shows a number of times over the years, and it works with that older crowd because in a few cases when I have played that, I've had people actually say that this takes me back to my high school days where they would play that particular song. Pairing that up with another song that had that was Earth Angel, but I didn't pull that one out for the charts. But that was
considerable mention.
Exactly. It definitely fit into that. But that was, and I think that came out with Back to the Future. When they did it there.
Yes. That's another time that these tunes just come out of nowhere when they show up in a film somewhere.
Yeah, precisely.
Wasn't on anybody's radar, and then all of a sudden
everyone was asking for Earth Angel after that.
Everybody wants it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the case with American Graffiti and so many other films where all of a sudden it's like they're hot songs again, and they weren't really for a minute.
Yeah,
that happens a lot. I'll give you a considerable mention since we're on the subject of ballads, and I'll go back. This one's a little weird. I know we're a little weird on my considerable mentions. This is not something that every DJ is going to have, but I feel like that if you have it and you get the right crowd, you're going to be a rock star. I'm talking about Piercy Faith's Theme from a Summer Place, 1959.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Now it's easy listening. It sounds like elevator music. If you've never heard it, YouTube it or whatever, you're gonna be, what are you talking about, B? This song was so hot. This was like, I don't know, what could I compare it to? This was the Ignition remix for the late 50s. This is what this was. This was bumping and grinding music for back then.
I was just gonna say it was getting busy music. Let's just put it out there. It was getting
rock and roll, and then the music of the time was just very rebellious. Everything about it was rebellious. It was unconventional. This was not rock and roll, but it was still popular. It was still a hit because it was a belly grinding song. I'll give you another interesting bit of trivia about this song, and the reason I really wanted to put it on the list was because that song was the inspiration for another song we may talk about in a couple of weeks, and I never knew it until I watched this documentary recently. But that song, if you rework it a little bit and you make it funky, is Night Fever by the Bee Gees. That was the inspiration for that song when they did it. Because Barry Gibb would go on holiday with his family, and whenever he heard Theme from a Summer Place, he thought, good times, having fun. This is what his family listened to. This was a hot track. And he said, boy, that's just a feel-good song. And he talked to his guy who does the synth, and he said, could you rework that into something? And he came up with Night Fever. And if you listen to him back to back, it's a trip.
Interesting.
They're about the same. It's pretty cool.
Very interesting. Okay, up to your number 9.
Number nine. Okay. Not my favorite song. Not one I play just because I play it when it's requested. But I feel like that in the 1950s, if you ever talked to anybody who was a teenager in the 50s, there were 3 kinds of people. Okay. You had Buddy Holly people, you had Elvis Presley people, and you had Jerry Lee Lewis people. You were one of the 3.
Yep.
Okay. So my number 9 is Great Balls of Fire, Jerry Lee Lewis. It's that hot rock and piano song. And I think it's, if you're going to have a Jerry Lee Lewis song, that's the one to probably play.
And when did that one come out?
That song came out in 1957.
Gotcha.
It was released in 57. Now it probably charted all through 58 and 59. A lot of those songs did. They would come out and they'd chart for 3 years.
Exactly. I noticed that on a couple of occasions that it would be in the Hot 100 for this year, and then it was again the next year.
Yeah,
and
way up there in the charts too. It wasn't
and it
just
came
like,
out early in, like mid-year, so it was on the charts well over 6 months both times.
Yeah, there's a song on my list that was released in the 50s and was on the charts in 1963. And I won't tell you about it till we get there. But the stuff, it was just singles. People wanted it and they'd buy it. It wasn't like today where it was just this disposable stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They hung on to this stuff for a while. The good stuff stuck around. So to have those good tracks is so important. What do you got for number 9, brother?
Next is from Bobby Day in 1958 with Rockin' Robin.
Ooh, Bobby Day.
A upbeat, fun song that is something that little kids get into just because it's kind of fun and silly. Mm-hmm. The older guests, they enjoy this. It really just kind of works. Even if people really don't know the song,
right? It
just works. It's got kind of that infectious sound.
It's almost a group active song.
Very much so. Very much so.
It's the kind of stuff that you can play for the elementary school and such. I mean, personally, as a DJ, I go Jackson 5 Rockin' Robin, which is 70s. I mean, that's the version that for me is hot.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that with a lot of tunes. There were a lot of tunes that came out in the 50s, but in the 60s and 70s, there were alternate versions by other artists or re-recordings of them that I felt like were better as mobile DJs. And I'm just saying, for me, I would always play the Jackson 5 version because you're Michael Jackson and it's a little more funky.
Yeah,
That's me.
Sure.
That's
and
me in Wisconsin, not almost Canada.
Exactly. We're up here where it's a little colder and we don't get that, the modern Michael Jackson stuff.
Now, speaking of what I just said, this is regional stuff. John's talking about what's happening in his neck of the woods. I'm talking about what's happening in mine. As you can imagine, if you live somewhere overseas, the UK, Australia, your lists are going to look very different.
Very much so.
I think the most interesting part about a conversation like this are the things that you can agree with us on, where it's just universal. It doesn't matter where you live. This is going to be hot where you live and where we live. Like, I don't have any Cliff Richard on my list because he didn't really hit my radar until like the late 70s, early 80s. But Cliff Richard is an institution. He is Elvis Presley in the UK.
Yeah.
But then Elvis Presley is something even bigger than Elvis Presley is here. Elvis Presley is royalty in the UK. And everywhere else in the world I've ever traveled, they ask about Elvis in Graceland. They're crazier about Elvis than we are, which I will get to later in my list, by the way.
Very good. Very good. We are up to your number 8.
Number 8. Again, I'm going different on this. I'm not just thinking about rock and roll. I'm not just thinking about rockabilly. I'm thinking about music from the 50s. And another group active song, a sing-along, great for college students, great for even the emo crowd because of the movie Beetlejuice, Harry Belafonte's Deo, the Banana Boat song.
Oh, yes.
Number 8. So, came up in Beetlejuice. I know that movie is, 26 years old now or something ridiculous.
Very much so.
I know. But it's still a hot film. And people see that movie and they like that song. And that's when that song kind of came out of, the archives. It wasn't on anybody's radar until Tim Burton put it in the film. And I think to this day, I still get requests from it to this day.
Very much so.
Sometimes it's end of night. It's not like for dancing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's sing along. It's just a drinking song. It's just a cool one to have in your arsenal. It's the Banana Boat song, aka Deo by Harry Belafonte.
Yep, that was a very, very popular one. That kind of fits in with my next one of Tequila.
Ooh, by the Champs.
By the Champs. Yep,
Latin flavor.
That was a very similar concept with that sing along song, played at a specific intentional time. it can work very, very well. It's not something that is isn't going to be the anchor of a dance set usually, but it has its moments.
And speaking of Tim Burton, that one turned up in another Tim Burton film, Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
That's
He was
right.
doing the tequila dance on the bar.
That's right. He was doing
And
his
to this day, when I play that song, people do that dance.
yeah, they're up
Even
there.
the little kids do it. It's just something they know. Tim Burton, he influenced our 50s library. Who knew, right?
Exactly.
We thought it was all about Johnny Depp. No, other stuff too. Not just Batman.
Uh,
But
What do
that
you-
song has a Latin flavor to it. That's something else interesting about it. I bet you it's one of the first pop songs in the U.S. with a real Latin flavor. And it's not just the name tequila. I think it goes deeper than that. I think it's the percussion in that song. That was probably like a wild tune when it came out.
Was
probably
that
a little racy song? Pardon?
before or after La Bamba?
Tequila was 1958.
So that would have been after.
I don't know what time. I don't know when La Bamba came out.
'Cause I thought La Bamba was out about the same time as Buddy Holly had his, which would have been 1958 too. So yeah, it could have all been about
Yeah.
the same time.
But right, it's kind of racy stuff regardless. But Richie Valens didn't particularly sound, like he was doing Latino stuff until he did the song La Bamba.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yep.
Oh Donna was just a nice pop song. But yeah, Tequila is no joke. That's got Latin flavor.
Oh,
right
very
there.
much so. Very much so.
So-
Across the board with that one.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, what do you got next? We're up to 7?
Is it my turn?
I think so.
Aha. Love and Marriage, Frank Sinatra.
Oh,
And that song came out in 1955, and it got really hot, as you know, John, when the television show Married with Children came out.
oh yes.
They would play it at the intro of it. And it's weird because if you watch reruns in syndication, they don't play that song anymore because they must have lost the
Rights to it.
It was too expensive to play it at the beginning of every syndicated version of Married with Children. But if you go back and watch it on Netflix or whatever, you're still getting Love and Marriage, and you can do all kinds of neat stuff with that song at a wedding as a mobile DJ.
Oh yeah. Yep. Haven't
And
played that
it's-
one in a long time.
Yeah, and it's a fun one to throw on. You can do it during cocktail or dinner. It's fun. Just you don't have to put it on for dancing necessarily, but it's just the whole attitude of it. And it gets a chuckle because of Married with Children. That's why it gets the chuckle.
Yeah.
It was just a nice song before that, but now it's like campy and ironic or whatever because of the TV show. So yeah, that's on my list for sure. That's a big one from the 50s. Again, not just doing the rock and roll, doing the whole
gamut. You're
Yeah.
going across the board. My number 7 is from Johnny Horton, The Battle of New Orleans.
Ooh,
Was probably one of the biggest sing-along songs for the longest time. Did I hit one of yours?
no,
I was going to say, did I finally get about,
no, it's not even on my radar. Honestly,
it wasn't even on the radar. Oh, this could be more of a regional thing. But
Yeah.
in the early days of our late 80s and early 90s, the kind of rural area here that sing along to the Battle of New Orleans was so big. I would almost correlate it to the scale of what Piano Man has been in the
Okay.
DJ world with that type of a
Right.
sing along. It was we got a lot of miles off that, and that was one of the songs on one of the discs that was only on a couple of discs.
wow. And that stuff was hard to find way back.
It was incredibly hard. And when we found it, we were like, woohoo!
Here we go.
Yeah.
It's not like today where it's like, oh, well, if
Download.
Amazon doesn't have it, I'll look on iTunes.
iTunes, yeah.
iTunes doesn't have it, I'll look on. Back then you had to actually go shopping. I
Exactly.
mean, how many times did you actually take a trip to Minneapolis, St. Paul just to buy music? I
Oh
bet
my
you
goodness gracious. We did that probably at least once a month.
did. And how far of a drive was that?
That was a couple of hours one way.
Yeah.
We
I
had
did
St.
the same thing
Cloud.
with Chicago.
Yeah, we had St. Cloud that was about an hour away. And we'd hit that weekly.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'd have to go down because they had some music shops in the cities that had compilations and things we just couldn't get here.
Right. And then you get those tunes like midweek that were must-haves for some reason or another. You didn't know about them last week, but you got to have them this week.
Yeah.
You got to go shopping. And
Yeah.
you got to get in the car and drive and go do it. So, yeah, just mentioning that's making me think a tune like that, you look at every compilation. You stick to the compilation section. And you're like, okay, these are all 50s. I'm going to read each and every one of these. And I probably have 8 songs on every one of these, but if it's got that one song that I want, I'm buying it.
Yep. That happened numerous times.
Yeah. That's how it
Numerous
worked
times.
for me too.
Yeah,
I spent a lot of money that way, but it was fun. I learned a lot about music. I got stuff I probably wouldn't normally get.
For sure.
So, technology is great, and it's also kind of
Yeah, it's taken away.
yeah, that has.
Taken away in many ways. Are we up to 6?
I think so. Boy, where was I? What was my last one? Okay, yeah. Here we go. This is another song that was always popular, but it happened in a movie. The movie just celebrated its 25th year anniversary. It's been kind of a big deal. So I think the song is going to make a resurgence again, and that would be Johnny Be Good by Chuck Berry. That was in Back to the Future.
Yes.
That was another one from Back to the Future. You talked about that earlier with Earth Angel. So, he just picked up his guitar and started playing it and at the school dance or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Good rock and roll song. Really good rock and roll song.
It really is. And I think it's actually an underutilized one, because that was one that we would mix in, because you can mix that in with a couple of the songs I'm sure we're going to talk about here as we get towards the top. It could go in.
Backbeat. There's a certain backbeat.
Yeah.
Doom, 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 doom,
Yeah,
doom,
exactly. And
the hottest songs have that backbeat. It's just it's almost like disco in a way, where it's just almost monotonous.
Mm-hmm.
But it's monotonous kind of in the background. It's not monotonous like up front. So those are the most danceable tunes, and those are the ones that have aged the best for, I think, dance floors for me anyway, are those with that backbeat to them, and that definitely has it. It's the first one on my list that has it.
Well,
Because Great Balls of Fire doesn't have it.
No, it
not consistently throughout the song anyway.
Okay, my next one is coming from Buddy Holly with Peggy Sue.
Ooh, Buddy.
Which was, it doesn't quite have the excitement. It doesn't have the energy of what the Chuck Berry and some of the others.
It's real close,
but it's close. It's deceivingly close, I think, is probably a way to describe it.
What a lot of people don't understand about Buddy Holly is that guy was like the David Bowie of the 50s. He was just like real avant-garde, and he did things that no one had done before.
Yes, and if you listen to his greatest hits album, because I'd purchased that, and he had a repertoire of music wide.
There's 52s on his greatest hits.
Yeah,
the Buddy Holly collection is huge.
So yeah, it's surprisingly so, and it's like, goodness. And how many years did he perform? He was only performing for a handful of years,
like 3 years, I think. 59, he was gone.
Yeah.
So that was it for him. Him and Richie Valens and the Big Bopper, they all went the same plane crash. And I believe that was 59.
Yeah, and I think that tonight was their last concert.
Yeah. I don't know,
years
North
and years
Dakota
ago,
or something.
Iowa.
Oh, was it Iowa?
Iowa, south of us. Yeah, they were talking about that earlier. So yeah, that was number 6. So we're up to number 5.
Well, my number 5 is Tequila by the Champs. We already talked about that.
Okay.
1958.
So I did hit one.
My top. It's like I'm doing my top 5 countdown of the hot ones.
Yeah.
That's where it lands for me. It's that hot. It lands at number 5.
Okay. My next one is, I wanted to go right down here. The Coasters with Yakety Yak from 1958.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one.
That is one that I back, and this is again where it mixes in with a different song. Is I will come out of something with Do Wah Diddy, and then going into Yakety Yak, and it really sets up a nice feel and a nice flow. But that's a song that I still use and use very successfully today at weddings.
And it turned up in a movie. I think it was Twins with Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger was singing it when he was walking around. It's funny to hear Arnold Schwarzenegger singing Yakety Yak.
Don't talk that. Yep.
Pretty confident it was Twins.
Yeah, I think you're right now that you mention it.
Yeah.
Oh.
But it's a jam, and it hasn't been on my radar for a long time. I'll probably put it on a list somewhere, and I'll squeeze it in there somewhere, because that is a really good song. I forgot all about it. Yeah. So thanks for that, John.
Yeah. 4, I think we're up to.
Ooh, 4. I got Hound Dog by Elvis Presley.
Do you have any other Elvis above that?
Nope.
Okay. So we should really, because he had so many huge hits.
He did. What I will say about Elvis, though, was that he had a lot of really good hits in the 60s.
Yep.
So I was real selective about what I grabbed for this list, because the 60s, if we do like some kind of expansion frat rock thing on this or something, there'll be several Elvis tunes that we hit there.
Yeah.
That were charting or released in the 60s.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hound Dog is, I don't know, like I said, you're either a a Buddy Holly, a Jerry Lee Lewis, or an Elvis. Most of the Buddy Holly people don't speak up anymore. The Jerry Lee Lewises do sometimes. The Elvis people won't go away.
They are there, yes.
It's like Night of the Living Dead. They're still here. Why are you still here? We were supposed to have buried you a long time ago. No, they're still here. So they expect more than one Elvis song. So Hound Dog is one you definitely want to have with you. There's another one that I'll mention next, but that's a big one. That's a big one you got to have.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm counting here, and in the 50s, Elvis hit number one for a period of weeks with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 songs that hit number one, and were there anywhere from 7 to 11 weeks or something like that.
Just huge.
Yeah, no one was close.
And like I said, if you go to England, they're still insane about him. When I was in Australia, they were insane about Elvis. They'd ask about Elvis. The people my age, who I consider like really cool, were still into Elvis. Like, oh yeah, well I have Elvis. It's like, what do you have Elvis for? That's for old ladies. No, he's cool. He's cool.
Yeah, isn't that something?
But it was always something the old ladies liked where I lived. So.
Oh, for sure. Let's see, my number 4. I'm going to go with another slow song. This is going with the Everly Brothers. All I Have to Do Is Dream. I like that. It's a really kind of just a sweet, kind of a belly rubbing song that again appeals to that older crowd. It's just slow enough, but yet there's enough of a vocal. It really has been a very successful slow song for me.
Nice. No, that's a good one. That's for sure. A not really nice song. And you hear a lot more of that kind of stuff when you get into the early 60s. There's a lot of that in the early 60s.
Very much so.
Talk about next week or something.
Yep. That'll be our next week.
So didn't we just interrupt you real quick? How many people are watching this anyway?
We've been bouncing between. We're at right now. I'm seeing
8,
40.
9.
No, we've been in the 40s.
3.
We've been in the 40s for the whole show.
All 7 viewers. That's so cool. Thank you, all 7 of you, for tuning in for this. I appreciate it. I shared it on my Facebook, hoping to get some traffic. So.
Yeah, we've been. We just had. I'm just checking to see if we had any questions because we've been so busy talking music.
Yeah. What's going on?
I haven't even checked. We're good. They're just folks are kind of commenting on Elvis and where he's been in and different things.
If there's anybody from overseas watching, please chime in. What's going on with Elvis Presley over there? Like I said, I traveled to Australia and I couldn't believe it. Young people were like, "Yeah, this is cool."
Yeah.
And something else that's interesting too, if you look at like the UK charts on things that like charted in 1955, all of a sudden for some reason just jump back on the pop charts in the mid 70s.
Yes.
I don't know why. We don't do that. It happens there. And I think Elvis does this. Cliff Richard also does it. We talked about the Cliff Richard UK thing. That's just weird. He's like the Elvis in a parallel universe, but he's there and he's still around and doing things. But if you're from somewhere else, chime in and let us know what's going on with the music where you live, because that'll also be something interesting to talk about.
Up to number 3.
Number 3, another Elvis song, Jailhouse Rock. That is probably the definitive Elvis Presley song. That's the song that you think of whenever a guy with sideburns walks into the room. It's dun boom boom. That's the tune. If you have one Elvis song, that is your Elvis song. Jailhouse Rock by Elvis Presley. From a movie called Jailhouse Rock, starring, guess who? Elvis Presley. And he made great films. Boy, they were really something else.
There was no sarcasm there.
No. No, they didn't have music videos back then, so they did a whole movie.
Yep.
It didn't matter if you could act or not. So that's Elvis, somebody would come and see it. So yeah, Jailhouse Rock, man, that's my number 3.
I'm going to do one more slow one here, and this will end my slow ones because this is one that from Johnny Mathis, Chances Are.
Oh, that's a nice song.
A nice song. Again, it's that feel, and over the years I have gotten more tips and I've gotten more people coming up and asking for cards by playing quality older slow romantic tunes.
Nice.
So these are songs that have been very, very effective for me. And Johnny Mathis, he was with the women at that age. They all, he was an eye catcher for them. So
I got a Mathis tune that I think is the 60s. I'd have to look it up. I think it's early 60s. If it's 50s, I rob myself for not mentioning it here, and that would be Misty.
I think that's later.
I think it's 60s.
Yeah, I believe so.
That's my go-to Mathis tune. Just for talking about Mathis. That's always my go-to Mathis tune, and it works really well. It's a nice song. But anything the guy does is beautiful. He's got a beautiful voice.
Yeah.
And good stuff to have.
Up to number 2.
Number 2 is special. The reason number 2 is special is because I actually like the song, and that might sound weird to you, but I typically don't enjoy a lot of music that was recorded before I was born. So for the most part, these songs, I don't hate them, but I wouldn't jam them at home. I wouldn't own it and say, oh, I feel like listening to this. I never feel like listening to anything I've talked about in this this whole list. But this song, however, is special. And this is definitive rock and roll. This is from 1954. And it's Bill Haley in the comics, Rock Around the Clock. Rock Around the Clock was the title track to the TV show Happy Days for like the first 2 seasons. But it wasn't the Bill Haley in the comics version, but it didn't matter. It sounded just like it.
Yes.
And yeah, you cannot lose with this tune. If someone ever says to you, play something from the 50s, and they're that vague, just play Rock Around the Clock. And you've done your job. This is the 50s song to own. 1954, believe it or not. This is what kicked it all off. If you look back and you think about it, this was the tune that got everybody's attention right away. It was that one right there.
Very much so. That's been a staple in our wedding shows, really, since we got the disc that had that on. It's been there.
And you had to have the right version of it, and that's something else I want to talk about. There are so many of these songs where there were alternate versions of them for one reason or another. Back in the old days, if you wanted to do a song that was a little longer, if you wanted a version that was a little longer for the album or whatever, you went and re-recorded the whole song. You didn't just remix a little part of it. It was a brand new version of the song. They did that up through the 80s with 12-inch singles. The single version of Rock Around the Clock that you want. There's another version out there that I see a lot, and I don't know if it was on the album or what. It just doesn't quite have that backbeat I'm talking about. It's not as smooth. So the one that I dig is the 1954 single, the one that charted, which is the
Billboard. Right. It was on the Billboard discs. That was one of those.
That's the one
that we burned up an awful lot.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Nothing else to do.
Let's see. Next one was from 1957. This is one that I tie in because I was going to, in my last 3, Rock Around the Clock was one of my last ones. The Crickets, though, with That'll Be the Day.
Ooh, Buddy Holly. Wow, I didn't have one on my list, and you've done 2.
This was actually the one that charted was not the Buddy Holly one. It was just the Crickets themselves, which would have been before he went solo.
No, it was always Buddy Holly and the Crickets.
Because I was looking that up to see if it was, and it did not say anything about Buddy Holly being involved with that one.
That's weird. The Crickets are still around, but that was Buddy Holly's,
the band.
I think one died recently. But I think there's 2 Crickets that are still up. There were 3 Crickets. But yeah, it was Buddy Holly and the Crickets.
Yeah, so I was wondering about that, if that was the case. And it's like...
Yeah, it's the Buddy Holly jam.
But yeah, so...
Buddy. I mean, they might have called it the Crickets, but it's Buddy Holly and the Crickets is what it is.
Okay. Yeah, that's again, another one that...
Kind of like Van Halen featuring David Lee Roth. It's still just Van Halen. David Lee Roth was there when he was Van Halen. Now it's just featuring David Lee Roth because it's 1984 and you got to jump.
Let's see. What are we up to? Are we up to?
We're number 1.
We are.
Yeah. Should we go through some considerable mentions before we go to 1?
Yeah, let's do that. What do you got for us?
Okay, I gave you one of them, and I got a few more, and it's just an artist. And the reason I'm mentioning this artist is because if I don't, he'll probably come to my house and yell at me because he's that kind of guy. And that's Little Richard. Little Richard's got some tunes in the 50s that you should probably have. And to me, it's a trifecta. It's Good Golly Miss Molly from 1958. It's Long Tall Sally from 1956, which if you go back again, the movie thing kind of does the resurgence of these things. Like my generation will know that song because of the movie Predator, because that's the song they're singing as they're coming in on the helicopter to go do whatever they were going to do military-wise. Everybody was that guy? He was your governor for a while.
Yeah, Ventura.
Ventura's in that movie, and I think the dude who was I can't remember these actors' names. The dude who's Apollo Creed was in that movie.
Oh,
Whatever his name is, and of
Yeah.
course Schwarzenegger. But yeah, that's the song they were listening to as they're coming in on that Apache helicopter or whatever it was. That's 1956 hot tune, good one to have. And then Tutti Frutti, which is like the staple Little Richard tune that's from 1955.
mhm.
So if you're gathering a 50s library, I would say definitely at least grab those 3 Little Richard songs. They're really, really a good tool to have. And that's it for my considerable mentions. That's all I had for considerable mentions.
I had a couple I wanted to talk about. Splish Splash from Bobby Darin.
Oh yeah, right on.
Very,
It's a good tune.
very usable. We
Very
mentioned.
Happy Days.
Oh, very much so.
When I think of that, I think Happy Days, and that's 70s, and that's our generation. Almost.
Exactly, but many of these came out in that because the show is based from that time. Speaking of songs that became popular later, this is when Willie and the Hand Jive came out, and of course it had its resurgent later, but that was
with Grease.
With Grease. And
Sean and I did it, I think. Born to Hand Jive was the one they did.
And I think Sean and I think in some cases did so many of those songs so much better than the originals.
Yeah. It's like Otis Day in the Night. Shout is a version I'm going to play Shout. That's just what it is. It's just how it is. That's how it's going to be.
And this is one actually, Brian, I've had requests and I don't get it. Bobby Darin's Mac the Knife. What's the appeal?
Yeah.
What's the appeal to that one?
It was in a movie, but people really dig it. They dig that in the same way that, and again, considerable mentions here, people dig Volare, and they dig That's Amore.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost Dean Martin kind of, it's Bobby Darin who does Mac the Knife, but it's almost in that same category as those Italian crooners.
Yeah.
Like Sinatra or whatever. I don't know, people dig it, and I get it once in a while too. It's kind of a dark tune if you listen to it. About a murderer.
Oh, very much so, very much so. But yet there are people who are like requesting it, and in the similar sequence as requesting some Sinatra and things. So, Good point. Good point.
Right there.
My number one song was "Rock Around the Clock," but a second song that is also that we use an awful lot is "At the Hop" from Danny and the Juniors.
Danny and the Juniors, and it's got that da 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 da, and that's the fun stuff that ages well. You can play it at the sock hop at the church. You can play it. Actually, you can play it at like the elementary school dance sometimes because the kids still know it. Or a lot of them do. It's a good one. It's a really good one.
Yeah, very much. So there's just a lot of good things, but it was, as you mentioned earlier, Brian, difficult to stay within that boundary of 19 in the 50s because we had 5 years, really, maybe 5.5 years to work with.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something about my number one, because I'm going to build this up because this is good.
Yep.
Okay. All right. As I was researching this, and I put research in it. I just didn't want to throw stuff against the wall. I wanted dates. I wanted facts.
Yep.
Before I was going to present this. As I was researching this, I looked at the Mobile Beat Top 200. And it blew my mind that I only found one song on it from the 1950s. I thought I had found 3. And then I started looking at the dates.
Yep.
And I only found 1. And the weirdest part about it is, it was well into the 100s. It wasn't even in the top 50 or the top 100. It was into the 100s. And then to take it a step further on Kapow, it's barely a 50s song. It's barely. It was released in 1959, but it charted from 1960 through 1963. It was still on the charts. And I mean, way up there, the top 10, top 15 of the year it charted because it was that hot. Now, this is the first song that people talk about that not only was scandalous, parents freaked out when they heard this, but it was the first song that had a dance that you could do by yourself. Before that, it was all waltzes, you did it together, that kind of stuff. But this tune, you could do it, you didn't need a partner, you could do it all by yourself. And then, of course, is Chubby Checker's The Twist. Now, Chubby Checker is a play off of Fats Domino. Fats Domino did a lot of bluesy piano stuff in the 50s, and that was hot.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it aged very well for a dance crowd. So they thought, well, Fats Domino, Fat Chubby Domino Checker, Chubby Checker, here we go. And there's the tune. And again, there are alternate versions of this. I got a version I like to play.
Exactly.
But that is the tune. And I will tell you that I play this tune every time I do a wedding reception. I guarantee you I play this song. And although it's 116 on the Mobile Beat Top 200, again, I play it all the time. I don't care if people ask for it or not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. Those lists are really good sometimes. Sometimes they're deceiving.
Very much
Because
so.
although no one asks for it, no one requests it, I get a full dance floor for that song every single time I play it. And I bet you I play it. If I miss a wedding here and there, it's very unusual. Maybe 1 or 2 a year I don't play it. But normally I always play it. And I play it early. And it brings them out and they dance.
Sure.
And it's not just the old people. It's the young people. And when we're talking about trying to play music as mobile DJs, we want to play songs that appeal to the widest variety of the audience.
Oh, for sure.
So if I'm playing a song that's just going to appeal to your 85-year-old, Aunt Bertha, what good is this really doing? She's happy, but everyone else cleared the floor. Or if I play something that she digs and, the 5-year-old kid digs and the teenager digs and, the Gen X person digs, then you've got something. And that is definitely one of those songs. The Twist, Chubby Checker, my number one. And it's barely a 50 song.
Yeah, barely. I was going to say, it charted in the 60s. I was looking at that one too.
Yeah, barely. And it was almost cheating to put it on the list, but it was almost criminal not to.
Exactly, yeah, because it was released, and I was going by the charting, but yeah, it's such a
yeah. And the reason I really wanted to get it on the list too is because a lot of people had recorded it before Chubby Checker, like in 55 and 56, and it was still hot. So when people were doing the sock hops, they were hearing this song.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't this version of the song, but they were still hearing it in the 50s. So for me, it was a crime not to put it on the list. It definitely had a presence in the 50s.
Yeah.
Whether or not it was his recording or not. I mean, it might have been like, oh, Christmas time, it dropped. Now people bought it. Now it's charting the first week of January 1960. Doesn't matter. It's still a 50 song. We get it on the damn list. But yeah, that was hot. And it's important. You got to have it. So that's what I got, man. That's what I got for you.
Yeah. No, that's great, Brian. We'll have to have you. I'll have you send that over because we want to post that in the description. We'll post both of the lists and such. We'll put them down there so you guys can go there, refer to that. For those of you who are younger and haven't done much, this might be a good kind of a starting point for you to have an idea of what to play when somebody's asking for some of the oldies music.
Sure.
Of course, oldies music now, they're referring to the 80s as oldies.
It is, John. We are who we are, man. We are who we are. But it's the 50s music has an appeal. Like I had mentioned, you can play the Bunny Hunt. You can play all that Ray Anthony stuff at any elementary school party, and they're going to react. They're going to dig it because it's group active, and they know it. And then they're going to bring that into their teens and their 20s as they go out to other parties. So it's totally cool to have this stuff and play it. It's like timeless. The Twist is timeless. You're always going to know this song. Rock Around the Clock, you're always going to know that one.
Yep.
I don't know if everyone's always going to know some of the other songs on my list, but those are big, and everyone's going to just know what they are. The 80s music's like that too. It's really weird because I have an 18-year-old daughter. That's her stuff. That's what she prefers to listen to is 80s music.
Yeah, is that something?
I didn't do that, by the way, because when my daughter and I are spending time, typically I'm listening to, believe it or not, EDM in the car. We always have. It's either been like British Top 40 that I get off like the Now UK CDs when she was tiny. But since I've had XM, it's EDM. She's not listening. I'm not influencing her on 70s or 80s music or 60s music. The kid likes the Monkees and the Beatles. I don't know where this is coming from. But I mean, the internet's a trip because people aren't just doing whatever spoon-fed to them through the radio. They're checking out their own stuff and seeing what they like.
Yeah, for sure.
It's my understanding that her generation is absolutely insane. They think the Safety Dance was like the number one song of the 80s.
It's interesting.
They think that was like the biggest tune. Everybody went to the Midland Without Hats concert to hear that one song,
And it wasn't. It was
it was a one-hit wonder in the summer of '83.
And it didn't chart all. There's many songs that didn't chart that well.
Canadian Act.
Yeah,
I loved it, but it wasn't around for very long.
Yeah, they were kind of a flash in the pan, but it's the tainted cell or tainted love from Soft Cell. Yeah, there's another one. It has more of a life now than it did then.
Yes. Yeah, hot stuff. And that's what's so interesting about what we do. You got to follow these trends too. You got to see what these kids like and listen to them. When they ask for stuff, sometimes I think they're kidding with me. They're joking around. There was a friend of mine who lives out in California, and he was asked to DJ at an Indian reservation. Mm-hmm. And he went there, and these were kind of some rough-looking guys, the way they were dressed and things like that. So he threw on hip hop. They didn't do anything. About 45 minutes later, one of them came up and said, "You have any Elvis?" Like, sure, yeah, I'll play some Elvis. And the place went crazy. They were about 50s music, 50s rock and roll.
Right.
And this was just a couple of years ago. And these were young kids. These were kids in their teens. But at the reservation, this is what they heard.
Right.
And this is what they liked.
That's what they
So you never know.
Yeah.
It's just cool to have all this stuff and be ready, be prepared at all times. You never know what direction you're going to have to go in.
Yeah.
People ask for one thing and they get something else.
Yeah.
Hence the twist of being at 116 on the Mobile Beat Top 200, which is criminal, by the way. I don't like that at all. It doesn't make any sense. It's very misleading. This is the best song ever.
Yeah.
That's not true. The best song ever is "Want to Be" by the Spice Girls. I won't lie. Close runner-up "Party in the USA" by Miley Cyrus. And I'm not even kidding. I love those songs.
Mm-hmm.
And I will play the hell out of those songs until people tell me to stop.
Yeah, exactly. There's money songs.
They get a good reaction. They make me happy. I enjoy them.
They enjoy them, and we make money playing them because there's just some songs that when it makes the crowd happy, we make money and we're happy too.
What is there anything else that's on your radar, like from the genre of 50s? Let's just talk about it as a genre. Is there anything that just comes off the top of your head that you feel like is a must, even if it creeps in the 60s a little bit?
You mentioned earlier Fats Domino.
Yes.
And that, again, going back when we were watching Happy Days, and Richie would always be singing. That had, on a couple of occasions, a resurgence for me over the years. I've had people pull that and say, "Hey, do you have any Fats Domino?" Remember that song that one guy sang in that TV show?
Right.
I mean, I've heard that one. So when you mentioned Fats Domino and you were talking Happy Days, it's like, oh yeah, that kind of fit together.
Yeah, Fats Domino, more bluesy. I think you can totally get it with all of this stuff. Like you hear it like car shows and things like that, and you can totally get away with it.
Yeah,
I do have in my notes, and I didn't mention it. The crazy part about 50s music, if you ever get in a situation where they only want 50s music, the weird part about 50s music is they're very short songs.
Yes, I think someone mentioned that they're just incredibly short.
They're
2 minutes.
They're like well under 3 minutes and 20 or 2 minutes and 20 seconds, kind of short. There's nothing over 3 minutes. A 3-minute song would be like epic.
I think there's one that we used to play an awful lot that was like a minute 54.
Yeah. So the point is that, if you can imagine, like typically when I'm doing a 6-hour wedding, I figure I play about 60 songs. About.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine playing like 30 songs an hour? I mean, if they're like under 2 minutes, if they're that short, like they're all Ramones songs. They're just boom, done.
Yep.
So if you get a gig where they want that stuff, have a lot of it, because you're going to have to play a lot of it, just because there's no extended remix of Tutti Frutti. You get what you get. So
yes,
have a lot of this stuff.
He was a great, but it was quick.
Yeah, but then that's where I think, extending into the 60s is so important, and hopefully we can talk about that, at least briefly on the next show.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more that fits into this genre as mobile DJs, that's definitely worth having. You can get away with playing a song that was recorded in 1954 back to back with a song recorded in 1965. 11-year difference, but it doesn't matter. It's still the same era.
Yeah, very much so. In the minds of, I think as you were pointing out earlier, we can push into the 70s, and it's still in the minds of a lot of people the same era now.
Right. Well, it was all this, we're reminiscing about kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe Animal House, they were talking about a college, something about it was like the class of 64, perhaps. And then I know that Grease was supposed to be 59.
Yep.
I'm pretty well. I don't know, but I think it is.
It was about there, yeah.
I think Grease 2 was supposed to be the class of 60. So that's the 50s. So that was all resurgence. Happy Days, of course, they used mostly the original tracks in that, but you heard a lot of that stuff. Like you said, Blueberry Hill and Yakety Yak and tons of stuff. Back to the Future, a lot of tunes came up. It's neat. Pop culture, you got to follow it, because this is where these resurgences do pop up every once in a while.
Very much so.
They know what I was talking about, dude. You just get me going. I don't want to shut up.
Oh, that's good.
That's why I do like 4-minute videos, because I can shut up. I can say it and shut up.
Well, we got to wrap.
An hour.
Yeah, we got to wrap things up for tonight, Brian. Okay. Next week, though, We'll be doing
Yes.
60s, and I truthfully, is looking at it, when you look at the numbers of songs in the top 500 of all time, the bulk of those songs on the top 500 are from the 60s.
And that one, I'm gonna have to really take my time on that one.
This will be a much more difficult one, and I don't even know.
I think I'll have a conversation with you between now and then on this, because you got rock, you got Motown,
Yeah,
you got all that frat rock stuff, extension of the 50s. You have a lot of things going on here.
yeah, there are just so
To
much.
just take it all and wrap it into a decade is almost unfair.
Exactly. That's what I'm kind of thinking. We'll have to figure a way to handle
Break
that.
down a couple different categories and maybe a top 10 of like 3 or 4 different 60s music categories.
Yeah, we'll figure something out, because we want to give you guys a tool that you can use when you're going out and doing your weddings, and that's really what this is about. A couple of guys who've been there and played a lot of music over the years, and some things work, some things don't, and trying to share that experience.
Yeah, but it's always good to have stuff. I mean, it's always, just in case. You may never play it, but if someone does say, "Hey, do you have?" There you go.
Yep, exactly.
It's about being a Boy Scout and being prepared sometimes.
That's a big part of it. So next week we will be back Tuesday night, gang. If you have any questions, comments, please put those down in the description below this video. We're going to be separating these videos, by the way. So if you're watching it tonight, we're going to be separating it into a shorter video. And please go to that one, which will be up tomorrow. That's when we'll have you do the questions and things, because the big one here tonight will only be the first section, because we're going to divide everything up. Tuesday we'll be back. We'll be doing it, I think, again at I think we're going to do it again at 9 o'clock Central. So
Sure.
that works out for you, Brian. Great.
Yeah.
And then we'll
Absolutely.
go and talk more music.
Cool. I like talking music.
That sounds great.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Brian Red, who is one of the ADJ guys that we talked to about ADJ gear. A mobile DJ.
Yeah, amongst other things. Yeah.
And he's a jack of all trades, and he does auto repair.
Yeah, actually I do. One-handed.
But again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. This is John Young with the Disc Jockey News and Disc Jockey News TV. Good night.